Okay, so good morning, everyone. We're fortunate today to be joined by Mustafa Sahin, Vice President of Investment and Trade for Edmonton Global. Mustafa is a senior international business and economic development leader with 28 years of experience in trade and investment, sales, and marketing. His career in economic development has taken him to the United States, Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Middle East before finally returning home to Canada in 2014. Mustafa has supported 28 trade and investment inbound and outbound missions since 2014, with 16 of those involving the Edmonton Metropolitan Region or Alberta. Please join me in welcoming Mustafa.
Thank you, Sasha. It's really nice to be here and to talk to this group and share a little bit about what we've been working on here at Edmonton Global in the past few months during the pandemic, which has certainly caused us to have to pivot. Typically, trade investment is a lot of outbound missions and trying to attract investors to come and visit our region, which is not really an option at the moment. I wanted to just give you an overview of the approach that we've taken to pivot from a trade investment perspective. Typically, a lot of organizations are waiting for leads and opportunities to come in through a variety of sources. And we even decided to take a more intentional approach by identifying the sectors and, in fact, the subsectors where we feel our region has strategic advantage, and then developing specific business cases within those regions, and then marketing those business cases to a global audience, primarily through our Canadian Government Trade Commissioner services around the world, to get in front of targeted investors and have them be interested in opportunities that we know are already a fit for our region, rather than a more generic approach where people say, hey, come and invest in our region. We have low taxes, we have lots of land, we have lots of industry, we have a young population. And then the investor will say, okay, great, so what do you have that's investment ready? And you hear crickets. So I wanted to just share the highlights from that approach. I'm going to do that. I'm going to just bring up a little presentation that we have used here. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. And I will put that into presentation mode. There we go. Can you see that? Yes, I'm hoping you can. Okay. So this is work that is still literally ongoing. And one more thing I should mention, Edmonton Global's been around for a little under 2 years now, essentially. And it was created to support the investment and trade activities for the Metropolitan Region, rather than just the city of Edmonton. So that makes up 15 municipalities and jurisdictions who are from Leduc and Sturgeon and Strathcona and Parkland County, to the city of Edmonton, to Morinville and Devon and Beaumont. So we run a wide gamut, both from urban to rural, industrial to agricultural, to logistics and supply chain. So it's a robust mix of sectors and industries that we can offer to an investor. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this exercise. So fairly quickly, what's the sector strategy process? So first there was an identification, research and information gathering, a very analytical, academic, empirical exercise. Then some opportunity selection to identify opportunities we feel are a fit. Then strategy development, so validation of those opportunities, and then a rollout of the strategy. Broadly speaking, those are the phases that we go through. In terms of the next steps, connecting with our partner network. So we have a network of economic development officers from each of the municipalities and counties that make up our region that we are in regular contact with and sharing information with and gathering input from. Beyond that, we've got partner network that includes the likes of Edmonton International Airport, the Alberta's Industrial Heartland Association, Alberta Innovates, Health City. So making sure that we're staying in touch with our partners and who have aligned interests with ours. After identifying the sector strategies, then the next step is to go into actually developing specific business cases. And by business case, we mean something that can be put directly in front of an investor that identifies what the business opportunity is, what the market potential is, what the key inputs and drivers are, the competitive advantages, and then finally the numbers. What are the actual numbers required in terms of an investment and the projected revenues and returns on that investment? So that's what we mean by a business case. Advocacy is the part of our job where we're out advocating to various levels of government around policy that will support these sectors. So that's both municipally, that's provincially, and that's also federally. And the targeted marketing piece we'll talk a bit more about, but that's where we're going out. And we've started doing a series of webinars where we are actually bringing together subject matter experts from around the region to talk specifically in a webinar format about the opportunity in the region. We've done 4 of these so far in the past 2.5 months, and they've been extremely well received. And again, these are targeting global audiences through the Trade Commissioner Service. We also run all of the sector strategies and proposed areas that we think might be a fit through a stress test. So what's important in the stress test? Is there value-added opportunity beyond just exporting a raw commodity? Is there high impact and high value from a regional impact, from a resiliency, and from diversification? Is there an adequate value proposition? What's the level of competitiveness with other jurisdictions? What's our regulatory climate look like? Is there a clustering of companies and industries around this sector? What's the alignment with the overall goals of our jurisdiction as well as the province and the country? And what's the projected market growth? So these are the elements that we judge or measure any opportunity against to see if it fits. Broadly speaking, we've identified 3 areas that we feel have the greatest potential in the short term. One is advanced manufacturing, which represents a leading opportunity in the shift to regionalization and nearshoring. So nearshoring meaning a lot of manufacturing has gone offshore, and because of the disruptions to the supply chain from COVID, there's an increased interest in trying to nearshore or bring some manufacturing back into our local markets. Agribusiness is a big one, represents a leading opportunity for a well-integrated food supply chain combined with Canada's farm-to-fork ecosystem. So rather than just exporting our raw agricultural products like wheat and canola and lentils and faba beans, we feel that there's tremendous opportunity that can be unlocked by processing of foods. So in fact, we're doing a webinar next week on plant protein fractionation. So what that means is there's a whole opportunity to supply non-meat protein food products. But in order to do that, the first step is to fractionate the products so that you have the input for food manufacturing. A specific example, McDonald's does not offer a non-meat burger. And the single reason why they don't is not because there isn't demand for it. There's nobody that could supply all of McDonald's Canada's demand, not Impossible Burger. Nobody has the capacity. So if somebody can unlock the protein fractionation piece, you could establish a non-meat manufacturing facility here in the Edmonton region, where, by the way, Cargill has a facility that supplies all of McDonald's Canada's beef burgers. So why not do the same thing on the plant protein side? There's also tremendous opportunity in terms of exports for non-meat products as well, because of our access to ports in the Pacific Coast, especially with Prince Rupert and Vancouver. Technology is an interesting one because technology goes both as a vertical industry and a horizontal. We are one of Canada's hub cities for artificial intelligence and machine learning, along with Montreal and Toronto. We have Google DeepMind here. We have Alta ML. We have Amy. There's incredible research and talent coming out of the University of Alberta. So there's critical mass in the tech sector, which can then be, and is in fact, being applied to some of the other verticals like energy, health, agribusiness, and manufacturing. Market trends by sector. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but you can see the amount of growth that we're expecting in PPE manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, plant-based protein, which we just touched on, energy AI, and especially health AI. These are areas that have tremendous growth. It also does reflect a little bit of the change in the economic landscape here in the province, as sectors like energy are having some challenges and they're having to pivot to different modes, if you will. So food and agriculture, again, we just talked about plant protein and the niche processing of fractionation. There's also opportunities around food and beverage processing. We have a emerging hemp industry. We have emerging cannabis industry. So this is an area that has the inputs, the land, and the manufacturing capability, as well as the access to markets with our logistics and supply chain. So, we have an airport that operates 24/7 in terms of cargo. We have direct rail access to both Prince Rupert and Vancouver ports. And in fact, those are the two closest ports from North America to Asia. And then we have direct rail access all the way down into the US, so right into Chicago and all the way down to the Gulf Coast. So, a lot of people don't recognize or realize the logistics and supply chain advantages that we have here in our region. By 2025, in the nutraceutical space, we're expecting that to be a $227 billion US industry with consolidated annual growth rate of 7%. And then CBDs is a subset of that, where we feel that CBD nutraceuticals and non-CBD nutraceuticals have huge opportunity. We came across a sector or a product recently called Haskap berries. Haskap berries apparently are grown here regularly in our region and are considered a superfood. And but we're not doing much in the way of processing them. So the truth is, most of our Haskap berries are being exported to the UK, processed and repackaged, and then sold back to us at $27 for a little bag of Haskap berries. So there's, again, tremendous opportunity when it comes to the emergence of this sector. We have the raw ingredients, but we just need to get into more of the value-added processing. Energy tech, innovations in programming, sensors, and AI. So, we're the only jurisdiction in Canada that has world-class AI talent and the energy facilities to apply the emerging technologies too. So when we look at just that sector, we're talking about $7.8 billion USD and aggregated growth rates of over 22% annually. Another subsector, plastics manufacturing. So we have a tremendous petrochemical space with the industrial heartland, and we have the Alberta Industrial Heartland Association. We're one of our partners. So we're about the only jurisdiction in Canada to domestically produce polypropylene. So polypropylene is a feedstock which can be used for many applications, including PPE. So the nearshoring trends, we have a strategically valuable location for plastics and PPE manufacturing. This is an area that's attracted tremendous growth and interest just in the past 9 months, and I expect that it will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. And what's nice is that's a downstream application of our petrochemical sector here in the industrial heartland. Life sciences. So in the pharmaceutical space, we're talking about pharmaceutical manufacturing and R&D. So we did a webinar on pharmaceutical manufacturing in August. That was our first one. It was based in large part on the presence of Gilead here, who have invested and continue to invest. So why does it make sense? Again, the nearshoring trends of wanting to have controlled supplies of key pharmaceutical products here in our country. And in terms of our regional strengths, we have a lot of talent, certifications, and the public infrastructure. And from a logistics supply chain, there's some very unique certifications that we have at our airport in terms of cold transport and storage that we can handle pharmaceuticals, which gives us a competitive advantage. Health tech and health AI. So why does this make sense? We have, again, world-class AI talent here already. We have the single largest health authority in Canada with Alberta Health, and we have demonstrated research and industry partnerships. We also happen to have Nobel Prize winning doctors working at the U of A. So Michael Houghton recently won the Nobel Prize in medicine. So all of the elements for a health AI, emerging health AI sector are here. And that's a sector which is essentially recession-proof. So again, just a summary of some of the immediate opportunities that we've identified through this exercise. So plant protein fractionation, peas and faba beans. Again, we have a webinar coming up next week on that, on October 28th. In the technology space, AI, attracting AI tech companies and research labs to take advantage of the talent that's here. Having Google DeepMinds here is a huge win for our region. But what we want to do is we want to encourage more companies to come here and be part of this ecosystem, rather than just hiring the talent away that's coming out of the U of A. So this is something which will take time, but there's strength in numbers. One of our board members at Edmonton Global is the founder of AltaML, Corey Jansen, and he's also participates on the board of the Canadian Innovation, CCI. Anyway, it was founded by Jim Balsley, founder of BlackBerry. So we have talent on our board and in our region in that space. And in fact, we did an AI webinar last month, which I would encourage you to take a look at. You can find it on our website, Edmonton Global website, or on our YouTube channel. Health and life sciences, again, the niche opportunity we're finding is in pharmaceutical manufacturing for small scale niche manufacturing and marketing. And in the food and agriculture space, nutraceuticals, especially around oats. So what's interesting is these are the first 4 that we've identified as low-hanging fruit. In total, we have about 10 opportunities that we've identified through the exercise we did reviewing and analyzing the sector strategies that we had. And our plan is to develop all of those over the next year. And then with each one to do a targeted marketing program and outreach to try and attract qualified investors who are interested in that sector. And this is something that, again, we're doing in partnership with the economic development officers in our region, who we work very closely with, as well as our partners, both regionally and provincially. So we do have a new player in the market. There's the new Invest Alberta Corporation, which was recently set up and is currently staffing up. And we work very closely with them because our interests are very aligned. And we want to make sure that the work that we're doing gets maximum leverage by being aligned with them at the provincial level and with our partners at the federal level with Global Affairs Canada as well and the Trade Commissioner Service. So by doing that, we feel that we have a more cohesive and intentional approach to investment attraction, which we feel is going to make a huge difference in terms of the number of opportunities we attract to the region, but also the rate at which we will convert those opportunities to successful transactions, because they're going to be aligned with the areas where we already have expertise and competitive advantage. So that was the overview. I really wanted to have an opportunity to open up for questions, to have discussions, and to make sure that this is relevant for this audience. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Mustafa. We do have quite a few questions actually in the chat. So, I mean, I think what I'll do actually is ask those who asked the questions to turn on their camera and ask you themselves. I'm going to change the view to gallery as well so that we can see who's talking. So the first question we have, actually I had one first, and just only because it went in order of kind of your presentation, I'm going to ask mine first. With regards to advocacy, as being one of your things that you guys do you have a few examples of some of the items you're currently advocating for at the provincial or either the metropolitan level?
2 examples I can give off the top of my head. One is 5G. So we convened a working group around 5G technology that included municipalities, businesses, as well as post-secondary education. And we did a series of conversations, dialogues, monthly meetings for probably about 3 months to get inputs on use cases, how the technology would be impactful. And then we made a series of recommendations in a fairly detailed strategy report to the province. And we also included industry. So TELUS was on there, and Rogers was invited, and Bell was invited. So really trying to, rather than have each municipality work independently with the telecom operators, trying to track the infrastructure required to deploy 5G. We tried to give it a regional approach to give it more critical mass, if you will. So that's one. Another is in rural broadband or broadband in general. And I know that this is a topic of great interest in Beaumont, and Beaumont is actually taking a very proactive and aggressive role when it comes to broadband. But this is something which we feel impacts the economy and the economic development of the region, the availability of high-speed and reliable internet access, especially in rural areas, which often get left behind because they don't have the urban density. And when you think about agriculture, people working remote during a pandemic, reliable high-speed internet is really important. So those are two examples that we've been working on the past few months.
Those are fantastic examples, and both are very stuff we've seen here in Beaumont recently. So those are fantastic. Okay, so we have, I just want to make sure, starting at the top. So Jessica, do you have a moment to pop on here to ask? We'll start with your first question, and Jessica has a few, so we'll maybe we might pop around and bug a couple other people in between. So go ahead with your first question on agriculture.
Yeah, let me scroll up because I was filling in our chat questions in case I forgot.
Is this your question, Jessica, or your toddler's?
Yeah.
My toddler will want to know something about your favorite color or food, I think. Feel free to share.
Or something to do with Minecraft.
Exactly, or Roblox, actually. But, you know.
Oh, Roblox.
My question actually comes on the heels of an announcement we heard in Alberta on the 21st, I think it was, that the government is going to cut 930 public service jobs in agriculture, forestry, and community service. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that, given that you said agriculture is such an important growth vertical. I thought, how do we align a loss of people with a growth in that sector, and what is something that us as small businesses might be able to do to help balance that?
Well, I think you could probably hire some of those people that are going to get cut if they have the skills. You know, there's you know, a lot of these things fall into policy, right? So I know that this government came in on a platform of cutting red tape and, you know, cutting the fat and trying to balance the budget. So I know that they've been going through exercises where they've been trying to identify areas to cut across industries. So I've seen it in ministries. What used to be economic development, trade and tourism now became jobs, economy and innovation. There have been some cuts there. There have been some cuts in Alberta energy, even. There have been some cuts across sectors. So I don't think that that's the province shying away from agriculture as much as this was just part of their exercise of rationalization, of, you know, trying to lean the books, especially when they know that revenues are going to be down, right? And this is something we're seeing at the municipality level as well too. You know, what's the impact for next year in terms of taxes? What does that mean for our revenues, and where can we cut? So I wouldn't take that as a signal that agriculture is not a priority. In fact, one of our board members is the Dean of Agriculture at U of A, Stan Blade. And in fact, this province has identified increases in targets for exports, agricultural exports in the province, where they're trying to get up close to $20 billion a year in agricultural exports. So kind of two different messages, but I think it's really going to be more the private sector that's going to, you know, really need to push forward with identifying, again, business opportunities, international markets. How can we get our product to international markets that maybe we haven't looked at in the past? I'll give one specific example just because it comes back to my own experience. So I spent 13 years based in Dubai, and I spent the past 3 years as the president of the Canada UAE Business Council. And Prince Rupert is the closest port to Asia from North America, closer than any other US port. And when we look at non-meat protein products, right, so veggie burgers or anything in that category, the largest market in the world, domestic market in the world, is India. There are 750 million Indians less than 25 years old, majority of whom either won't eat meat, you know, for religious reasons, or can't afford to eat meat. So, and you know, when you think about an export market, that's a market which is, you know, more than double the size of North America. Huge, right?
Yeah.
And what we have is we have logistics supply chain that already goes there. So one of the largest buyers of canola and wheat from Canada is a group out of Dubai. And they buy about $500 million a year worth of agricultural products from Western Canada. And they do all of the canola crushing and the wheat crushing and the processing there in Dubai. And then they re-export it to India, to China, to Saudi Arabia, and to Africa. So the owner, the founder of that group is actually going to be on our webinar next week because he'd like to learn more about the opportunities here. So we have the mixed blessing of having grown up right next to the world's largest market, the United States, and it's made us lazy. All we had to do was wake up in the morning, sell whatever we had, and we were comfortable. Well, things have changed, right? The US is no longer completely reliable. We need to diversify. And the good news is a lot of the building blocks are there, but just getting Albertans, Edmontonians to think a little more courageously, adventurously about going into international markets is part of what we want to try and do.
So what would be your kind of first step suggestion to a smaller business to be more courageous? Like, what is it that we need to do to bridge that gap so that we are taking advantage of that massive market you're talking about?
So I would say the steps are, take your business case of what it is you're currently producing, reach out to the local economic development office in Beaumont, which you have, and say, listen, here's what we're currently doing, here's where we're exporting, here's who our customers are, how can we diversify, how can we grow? Tell us about what's happening in the market, and they'll hopefully come to us and we'll provide some more additional context. We'll steer them towards the Government of Alberta, Ministry of Agriculture, to, hey, listen, do you have trade missions coming up that are aligned with our sectors and what we're doing? And you know, our idea is if we can get things like, you know, hemp processing or protein fractionation facilities set up here, we then want to make sure that there's feedstock. So farmers are very resourceful. They can grow anything depending on what the market demands. The guy says, you know, do you want faba? I can grow faba. You want hemp? I can grow hemp, but I want to grow something that I know will sell, right? That I know that there's a demand for. So if we can create local demand for the products, I know that our farmers are nimble in terms of adjusting what they will do.
Okay, that's fantastic and really exciting. I'm kind of like ready. All right, what do I do now? Very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
The future is bright. In spite of the current pain, we are very blessed as a region, as a province and as a region. We have lots that we can pivot towards as energy is having a tough go right now. There are a lot of markets that don't have 3 or 4 different sectors like we do to take advantage of.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's uplifting to hear in the space of our current climate and news, for sure. That's fantastic. Thank you.
So in light of that last comment that you made, I'm going to actually ask Mike if he's available to ask his question about oil and gas and the rebound. Mike, are you there?
I am. Yeah, just can turn the video on here.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Well, thanks very much, Mustafa, for your presentation. It's been very insightful so far. I really like the ideas and new technologies and the advancements and whatnot, how things are going. However, like our current provincial government is heavily focused and really doubling, tripling down on a rebound on oil and gas. And, you know, I do a lot of exploring, I do a lot of whatnot, and people seem to forget in terms of the history of Alberta, the many economies that have gone through, and how they've done very well, then they've gone bust. With that being said, what are you guys doing to advocate and promote and to, so shall I say, rally the government to kind of get them to change their perception, or, you know, use the new 2020 word of pivot in terms of what they're looking to do to embrace this new technology and to move forward and promote what you guys have?
And you
I
mean
see
the
that as
Alberta,
like your largest problem.
how are we advocating the Alberta government?
Well, no, not advocate the Alberta government, but advocate what you guys are going to be doing, because I can anticipate a lot of roadblocks coming through with, you know, a heavy focus on oil and gas and a strong reluctance to, you know, accept this and move forward. So what, have you guys thought of a game plan for that, or what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, you know, I think that sometimes the public rhetoric is intentional to speak to a voter base, right? Same way that Trump has to say certain things because he wants to talk to his voter base because they got him elected. I think that there's certain rhetoric that, you know, this government has to say to the voter base, which is traditional oil and gas supporters. And the truth is that a lot of what happens with oil and gas from a price perspective is out of our control as Canada, right? I mean, Russia and Saudi Arabia getting into production spats is what's going to drive oil prices up and down as much as the pandemic and demand. But what we tried to do is say, where are there opportunities to pivot, to identify new sectors? And a big one that we think is going to have impacts in the future is hydrogen. So you're starting to hear a little bit about it. I think you're going to hear more about hydrogen, both at the federal level and at the provincial level in the coming months, because it's part of the story of, you know, pivoting towards a green energy story for both the province and the feds. The truth is that heavy oil is now considered, you know, black sheep internationally. European sovereign funds, pension funds, sovereign funds, multinational investors, they're all like, oh no, heavy oil, Alberta, Western Canada, it's bad. Our investors don't want it. It doesn't align with SDGs. So, you know, they've all left and sold and said they won't be involved in it. Now, there's a bigger lens view of energy, right? Oil and gas is not going to disappear overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
In my previous role, I worked fairly closely with the UAE energy minister. He was the president of OPEC in 2018 when we brought him to Calgary for the Stampede Investment Forum. And he said very articulately, listen, the global population is growing. Emerging markets are emerging. So overall, global demand for energy is growing. And oil and gas was at about 100 million barrels a day of production. And the feeling was that generally it would stay somewhere around that level for the foreseeable future, but that all the increasing demands for energy would have to be offset by alternative sources like renewables. And I thought that was a pretty logical approach. And, you know, we don't have enough renewables to turn off oil and gas completely overnight. So it's still going to be around in some way, shape, or form for the next 30 years to 40 years probably. But at what levels, that will vary along the way. Hydrogen is an interesting one. And there are, you know, three different flavors, if you will, of hydrogen. There's gray hydrogen, which comes from gas, but has the carbon emitted, so it's not very attractive. There's blue hydrogen, which is hydrogen derived from gas, but with the carbon captured and stored through carbon capture storage technology, which we have both the expertise and the capacity for here in Alberta. And then there's green hydrogen, which comes from renewable sources, which has no carbon impact. Canada is one of the two cheapest jurisdictions in the world for the production of blue hydrogen, us and Russia. And there are lots of low-hanging fruit applications for hydrogen. Right now, it's currently possible to blend hydrogen with gas and use it to heat our homes. So ATCO is a pioneer in working in the hydrogen space. They're doing a pilot project in Australia with green hydrogen, but they also have the ability, even from now, to start blending hydrogen into the pipelines that's going into our home. And there's limits to how high it could go. So pivoting towards hydrogen is a big one that the provincial government has actually been very receptive to, and we're in regular conversations with. We feel that hydrogen has the potential to be a game changer over the next 30 to 40 years in the same way that LNG and gas is. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve, both with advocacy, with trying to make sure that there's infrastructure there, and that we've got the infrastructure to export as well. Hydrogen is globally interesting for Europe right now, for Japan, for California, and for even the Middle East. So Saudi Arabia recently announced a $5 billion investment into hydrogen and just announced their first exports of blue ammonia to Japan. So it's amazing how these things are working. I had a conversation last month with some folks from Praxair and Linde, and they just signed a deal to build the world's largest hydrogen fueling station for rail application in Germany. So this is one which is quite new, but which I think is going to have legs. It'll have technical challenges, but we're trying to position actually the Edmonton region to be the node for Canadian hydrogen development over the next 10 to 15 years.
Okay, perfect. Right on. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I give long answers. I apologize. There's just so much going on.
No, that's all right, because you know, you hear the rhetoric that's coming from the top, and in the future, I mean, we still obviously need oil and gas, but it appears that they're doubling down, tripling down on this, and you know, technology is coming, and this is the way of the future, right? We have to look at it.
There's a lot of technology that's also being applied to, you know, pipelines and monitoring and safety and security, but one thing I think that the sector didn't do well over the past few decades was its public messaging. And that's something we want to try and help with on the hydrogen story, to get ahead of the narrative and explain it in terms of the realities of its technical challenges, the realities of its environmental impact, and to give people the true story in a way that, you know, sometimes the debates on oil and gas especially get very emotional, and everybody's divided into their camps, and you know, it's hard to get the rational middle to say, hey, listen, you know, everybody who's come and seen our, you know, energy story from international markets say, oh, you guys aren't very dirty. You're a lot cleaner than we are. We don't have to do this in South America or Africa or the Middle East. Holy cow, right? But you know, the reality is sometimes misjudged by the perception.
Yeah, exactly. Right on. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have another question here. It says, do you have examples of AI in healthcare in health right now? Suggestions for small businesses on how to leverage ML and AI, machine learning and AI? And is there funding available for businesses that want to bring tech into their business?
I don't have any examples of AI in healthcare right now off the top of my head. I do have some sector experts who are actually over at the U of A today filming some B footage ahead of a diabetes webinar we're going to be doing in November. So next month we're doing a webinar on diabetes research, because Edmonton is actually one of the leading jurisdictions for diabetes treatment in the world. So we've actually have developed something called the Edmonton Protocol, which is helpful in treating type 1 diabetes. Again, we have so many well-kept secrets in our area, in our region. So I apologize, I don't have a very specific example for AI application in healthcare right now. In terms of the tech sector and funding that's available, I know that, you know, there was the SHRED program, and I know that they sort of took it away, and then they're supposed to offer some other programs. In terms of specific questions on that, again, I would say reach out to the EDO in Beaumont, ask them what the request is, and they'll share it with our team and my strategy and advocacy expert, my colleague. They're the ones who really have their fingers on the pulse of programs and funding and advocacy. They could give a much better answer than I could.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to pass it back to Jessica. She's got a series of questions actually, and I think they all kind of filter onto each other. So I'm just going to give her the stage for a minute.
Yeah, well, I was interested in that machine learning aspect because I'm working with a local Edmonton startup actually, and they're wondering how to be able to use a certain technology to maybe, like if it's a kiosk and people walk in front of the kiosk, if it would be able to read your temperature or provide some other kind of health advice. So I was just wondering what the process would be to kind of integrate that. But I guess a broader question would be, as a small business, if we know machine learning is taking off in Alberta, AI obviously has a role, what would be the steps for a smaller business, like maybe some of our businesses within the Chamber of Commerce, so that they could kind of help themselves grow using this kind of technology? What would be their step if they don't necessarily have an employee who can code in R, right? What would they be doing?
I think one of the best resources we have in the region is AMI, right? So the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute is a huge asset that we have here. Now, how do we engage with them in a way that is aligned with the services they can actually provide? That's again where I would say, have the companies, you know, outreach to the EDO, because I always want to make sure that we're working through your economic development officers and not cutting them out of the loop. So work with EDO. They'll reach out to us and say, hey, listen, here's the company, here's their request. Who should we direct them towards? Because what I'm trying to make sure is that we continue to develop to be sort of the really smart librarian. You know, we're not going to be a subject matter experts on everything, but I really want to make sure we understand the ecosystem of the companies, the players, the resources in our region, and which institutions have the skill sets that match, make, and align. So some things could be at AMI, some things could be at NAIT, programs at NAIT or Grant McEwen or the U of A. So depending on the inquiry, I would say reach out to your EDO, ask them to reach out to us, and we can try and put them in touch with the right organization.
Okay, that sounds good. And just in terms of business, keeping up with the research that you do, like on your slides, you were showing some information there. How would we, is it just a case of coming to the Edmonton Global website? Are there email lists that we should be signing up for?
Yes, there's a lot of information that we are posting, constantly updating on our website. So we do sector strategies, right? So we have like 2-page summaries of the key sectors that we've identified in the Edmonton Metropolitan Region. Sometimes we might post, actually we should be posting in the coming weeks, little 2-page updates on the subsectors that we've just identified in business cases. So there's good information there. We do have a monthly newsletter or bi-weekly newsletter. I forget the frequency.
Okay.
So there is, you know, it's a growing area of focus for us at Edmonton Global is the marketing and communications piece. Because very honestly, the biggest challenge our region has in terms of attracting foreign investment is that people outside of Canada don't even know who Edmonton is.
That's right.
We're not even on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to go to market and create a brand for our region and get it out to a global audience through a whole range of exercises, including these webinars. And I want people to know of us as not oil and gas country, but you know, an innovation hub, healthcare and life sciences, agri-food, agriculture, you know, all these other sectors, not just a hockey town that hasn't won a cup in a while.
That sounds great. Okay. I like that. All right. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I just popped the, oh, I didn't, sorry. I'm trying to pop the newsletter link into the chat.
Oh, there you go.
Because I know you had talked about that when you presented to the chambers, and
Yes.
I made a note I should sign up, and as you said that, I'm like, wait a minute, I haven't gotten one since, and I should have by now. So yeah, definitely going to be signing up for that. And I mean, all of this information as far as marketing, a lot of this is stuff that chambers would want to share with their businesses. So I mean, we definitely find ways to share some information as you guys have it available, and the newsletter will help with that.
There's a lot of good things going on here. There's a groundswell of change in our region, I can tell you. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the efforts are aligned in a way that not everybody's having to row their own boat, right? You know, because before Edmonton Global coming along, every, you know, municipality just was doing their own economic development. And it's hard to get attention at the highest levels, both provincially and federally, let alone internationally. But if we can use the region and the collaborative resources and attract attention, the mantra is shared investment for shared benefit, right? So by all the municipalities chipping in and creating Edmonton Global, the investment that will come to the region will realize benefits for everybody. So if somebody sets up at the airport, you know, maybe 20 or 30% of the people working in those jobs might be living in Beaumont, right? And that'll affect local business and taxes, right? So it's not always just about, oh, we have to attract a shiny new factory into our municipality. That's an old way of looking at economic development, which isn't really that relevant today anymore, especially as remote work is becoming more common and, you know, telecommuting and all of these things. So we're trying to develop programs which take advantage of the full region, from the industrial aspects to the logistics, to the agriculture, to the processing and the manufacturing. And as a region, we have a lot more to offer than in the old days the city itself did when it came to like Edmonton Economic Development Corporation. So the EDOs are an important part of that. The chambers of commerce are an important part of that. The food chain, forgive the pun, and the new Invest Alberta, which I think is going to be significantly better than the old one. You know, the old one was a little bureaucratic and a little more focused on activity. You know, hey, how many meetings did we have? How many emails did we reply to? How many, you know, missions were organized? This one's going to be a little bit more business focused. And I do that with our team here. I remind our trade and investment team that, listen, just because Edmonton Global is a not-for-profit does not mean that we are a charitable organization. If we are not closing transactions and bringing investments into this region, we will all be fired and replaced with somebody who will. Let's be honest. You know, just doing work and showing up is not going to be enough. We have to make a difference. So that cultural change and everybody sort of being aligned, it will take time to really see the full benefit of that, because truly diversifying an economy like this region, this size, probably takes 10 years, right? But it's going to take 10 years of sustained effort. It's going to show some results along the way, but 10 years from now, we'll look back and go, holy cow, look at how much we've changed, even though it might not be so obvious at every step along the way. I guess it's like a long-term health diet program. Like if you really want it to be sticky, you know, it's not a crash diet that, you know, after 3 months, you've lost the weight and then 2 months later, you put it all back on plus 3 pounds or something.
It has to be sustainable.
It really does.
And part of that, probably you mentioned communications, which is my own personal love, is, so it sounds like there needs to be lots of communication with Albertans then about how this is progressing so that there is that desire to keep going, to sustain that for the bigger picture in 10 years.
Absolutely. And this is, you know, one of the events of conversations like this is we need to establish better and closer working relationship with the business community, right? A lot of times the business community didn't see value in the economic development organizations like EEDC, and we're doing things different. So we want them to understand that we are a resource. Come ask us. If we don't have the answer, at least we'll tell you we don't have the answer, but we'll try and steer you in the right direction. Because, you know, if people want to attract investment, they want to say, okay, what's it ready for investment? We need to have our fingers on the pulse. If somebody's trying to raise money, if somebody's looking to sell their company, if somebody is looking to expand, you know, we might be able to help them just from our work and our knowledge of what's going on in the marketplace. So we can hopefully help. But definitely, if you're a fan of Marcom, go watch the webinars, which I think Sasha may have just put the link in the chat. They're really well done, you know, and they give a good impression of Edmonton, which is something we can do without people having to travel here because of COVID. You know, so we're investing money like professional film crews, everybody's mic'd up, and it's a nice setting. Like the AI one was at the Courtyard Marriott overlooking the river valley, you know, and the one on protein fractionation is going to be down in Leduc at the food processing facility, you know, and showing it in that setting. There was one earlier this week about attracting talent to the region from the US, especially because of political environment, and we did it out at the airport. So, you know, all of these are tools to, again, change people's perception. And then we're also working very closely with Explore Edmonton. So Explore Edmonton was the old tourism and event attraction piece of the EDC. And we're working on trying to bring world-class events and conferences here. So we will be hosting the world's first nanotechnology conference here in Edmonton next October.
Wow.
In partnership with Nano Canada.
What?
That's amazing.
Incredible. Is that live? How do you sign up for that?
Soon. It's actually going to be on their website very soon. So again, we'll post that on our social media, on our LinkedIn, on our website.
Wow.
And in the newsletter. So then as soon as it's in the newsletter, we can celebrate with you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then I just had conversations the past 2 weeks. They're talking to the World Energy Agency about trying to bring the World Hydrogen Congress here in 2024. So that's an event that happens every 2 years. We're also in the early stages of working on a Davos-style investment attraction conference that we want to host in Jasper, in partnership with Jasper Tourism and Explore Edmonton. You know, very high-end, very exclusive, getting our ambassadors from key markets around the world, like China and the UK, to bring businesses here to like maybe a 3-day conference up in the mountains. You know, Davos started with that, you know, in Switzerland years ago, and it became this destination. And we're thinking, you know what, there's an opportunity to do something like that here because the Stampede Investment Forum is kind of fading away from interest. It's not really as relevant today, the setting. So
a different demographic as well, right?
It's a different demographic, right? Yeah. And we've already, I mean, that idea was very positively received by Global Affairs Canada. They said, we'd love that idea of an event like that. So, you know, those are all things where if we're doing all the right things in all the right areas and we're consistent about it, we will see results. It'll take a bit of time, but we will definitely see results. And hopefully the rising tide lifts all the boats that are in the harbor, right? And we all benefit.
Oh, that's exciting. I know the Explore Edmonton has been coming up on my own Instagram feed. And it's made me, just as someone who's moved to Alberta, really want to get out and explore different aspects because it has started to paint a different picture for me of different places to explore. So even on a tourism level, I can see how that is changing.
It is, right? You know, we're reticent in terms of promoting our tourism sometimes. We don't do a good enough job. We take it for granted. Back in 2018, when I brought my board meeting from, a bunch of UA board members to Calgary during the Stampede Investment Forum, and, I told them to go up and visit Banff, and they said, "Oh my God, it's beautiful here. This is amazing. Why have we never heard of this? You guys never promote yourselves, and we never see TV commercials in Dubai and Abu Dhabi about Canadian tourism. Why not, right?" So we do take it for granted sometimes. And, we want to give people a virtual experience. Another thing that we're working on is we're trying to work with the municipalities to create some digital libraries of virtual tours of the region. So, we're trying to get some funding and, get some drone footage to help have that library of footage that shows what does Beaumont look like? What's the industrial areas? What does the downtown look like? What's the residential area look like? And then have that available so that when we have opportunities to put something out to the market, we actually have the tools. That's something that we think we can do at scale that maybe individual municipalities maybe couldn't. And if we can do it at scale, we can do it with a consistent look and feel so that the quality of everything makes a bigger impression.
I have an example for you on that. I used to work with the Alberta Geological Survey, and we created, it's called a Geo Tour. And it's a virtual tour of some of the main tourist destinations within Alberta, or the lesser known maybe tourist destinations. And we found that now, since more people are at home, that they are really traveling virtually to go explore those sites.
Oh, send it over. I'll share it with our Marcom team as an example.
All right, yeah, will do.
Awesome. So much information you've shared today, Mustafa. I just was looking on the website too to see if there's anything else I should share. Edmonton Global, or Edmonton, sorry. Well, I know you're from Edmonton Global, but I mean, Explore Edmonton is another, that's a great initiative. The examples you gave of the different conferences and things. I mean, as the exact example you gave and Jess said, demographic. I mean, the Calgary Stampede, you're right. It's a totally different demographic. And so something in Jasper that you're talking about that's so cool.
Right.
At a global, yeah. So I'm just going to ask one more time and see if anyone else has any questions. I see nothing else in the chat, but I'm just going to open the floor and let any other conversation happen. That we need. Jess, you've had so many. Do you have any others?
No, but I do want to just thank Mustafa from like a human point of view. The positivity, the hope that you have given me for sure in our future of this province is really heartening and really amazing to feel that you have and your group has a solid plan to take us somewhere really positive and accessible for many Albertans. So thank you for sharing all that info.
You're welcome. You should feel optimistic. We have a lot to offer here. My job is to just try and help make sure that we are a bit more aggressive, a bit more assertive. I can tell you from my years in the US and Middle East and other jurisdictions that Canada has so much to offer, but we almost have a bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to going to international markets. The Americans have a superiority complex. They think they're better than they are, but they're just charged into the room and they'll do it. And we're really polite and passive and we don't do that. So, we need to up our game. We need to be a bit more aggressive. Something I did in 2005 to 2009 while I was in Dubai, I actually set up a company that brought BlackBerry to the Middle East. And it was an interesting experience. But to give you an idea of the potential, that business in 6 years went from 0 to 1.3 billion US in annual revenues.
My dad worked at RIM in Waterloo. He was one of the lead engineers.
Okay, so that's why I know Jim and Mike and those guys, right? That it was a market they weren't ready to enter, and so we took the initiative and helped them with it, and it ended up being a great partnership. They were making $500 million a year profit off of our regional operations, separate from the business. And so there was a Canadian company with huge international market opportunity, just needed that push to get it in there. So we need more of our Canadian executives who've had international experience to come back and help some of our Canadian tech companies go international. We are like the world's farm system of tech talent. The Americans just keep buying our tech companies for pennies on the dollar and turning them into huge wins. So I want to see more of those companies remain Canadian, get them investment so they can grow internationally.
Great. All right.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So I would just say, Sasha, you know, if every couple months you want to do something like this, I can have different members of our team, maybe from different sectors, even come in and do this and talk about, you know, a specific sector, if that's helpful.
That would be so fantastic. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll chat after and I'll be signing up for the newsletter. And I hope everyone here does. We'll share that information on our social streams as well. And hopefully you guys get a little burst of newsletter sign up so that you can get that information to more viewers.
Thank you. And sign up for the webinar if you just want to see how we are promoting the sector. So it's October 28th, so next week. And enjoy your weekends. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.